Wasting money on cures. Forgot how to fix myself. They say that time is free. Then why is it so precious? Oh, I'll say memories in my head, like Polaroids on walls. They remind you to look ahead. Time is running out. Time is running out. Lately I've lost my track. I've sailed the deeper seas, hoping to find something to bring back better times. Oh, I'll say memories in my head, like Polaroids on walls. They remind you to look ahead. But time is running out. 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 Time is running. Time is running out. But time is running out. What if my best days are over? They can be over. They can't be over now. Time is running out. What if my best days are over? They can't be over now. Time is running out. Time is running out. Time is running out.
Okay, hi everybody, welcome to the second in our series of Easter live revision sessions. Back on, was it Monday, we did a session on government intervention, and today we're looking at employment and unemployment. And tomorrow we're going to take a look at ADAS analysis, economic cycles, and the multiplier, three really key macro ideas that are likely to appear on paper two. Before we start today's session, welcome to everybody. A quick reminder, we are on the road again. We have one more week left. Sessions 19 to 22 of our Grade Booster Tour. And we're in London in the final week of April, first few days of May. We have two dates in Stratford at the View Cinema there, one for AQA, one for EdXL, and then we hit the tube, go across west to View White City for 2 days. Again, one AQA, one EdXL. And hundreds of tickets already sold for each event. We love meeting students and teachers at these great Grade Booster courses, so please do say hello. And there are tickets still available on the Tutor website. Okay, let's look at today's key topic, which is unemployment. We're going to start with 5 multiple choice questions. We also have some calculation questions for you. So if you're subscribed to the channel, post your answers in the chat window and we'll select some of the best answers as they go through today. First question, which situation best illustrates someone who is underemployed? Now keep in mind, of course, this is now on the spec for all exam boards, and the answers are flying in very quickly. If you're watching the live stream today with us in our time together, keep an eye on the chat window. There's some great answers always come through, especially when we get to the longer questions. Freddie and Felix and Dan and Genevieve and Shamima all saying it's B. Let's double check. It is indeed B, underemployed. So somebody, for example, who might be working part-time would like to go full-time, but can't because whatever cost of childcare or the return to working is too low. Next question, number 2. Which example best represents structural unemployment? So you need to know the main causes of unemployment, but which example is probably the best example of that? What do we think? A coal miner, a barista, a car industry worker, a graduate? James and Krish and Ollie, some of our regular outstanding contributors, they all think it's A. Let's double check. Yes, it is A. Okay. The others, barista would be just a voluntary unemployment, frictional in a sense. Car worker would be cyclical, and graduate would be, again, frictional unemployment. Now, these questions get a little harder. So here's question number 3 for you. Which combination of policies is most likely, I know some of you don't know that phrase, is most likely to reduce cyclical and structural unemployment in the medium term? So this is a degree of difficulty more difficult in terms of matching policy to type of unemployment. What do we think? Lots of answers coming through. Thank you for those of you watching live. Well over 300 people now joining us. If you're subscribed to the channel, post your answer in the chat window, and our production team will be working hard. Dan and Ollie, Helen, Sam all think it's B, and the answer is it is B. Yeah, fiscal stimulus to address cyclical unemployment, a Keynesian fiscal stimulus, and vocational training to address structural unemployment. Good. 2 more. Here's number 4. How can migration contribute to employment growth in the economy? I happen to feel that migration could well be a major topic area this year. I'm not question spotting or topic, it's just so important, and the numbers are significant. So how can migration contribute to employment growth in an economy such as the UK? Most people here, a couple of people saying A, most people saying B. The answer is B, skills gaps, and of course they increase the size of the active labour supply. In theory, that causes an expansion of labour demand and the new equilibrium employment rate. Number 5, a slightly harder question. In fact, this is the hardest of the 5, so please do have a go. Which of the following scenarios would most likely lead to a simultaneous rise in both the unemployment rate and the inactivity rate? So more text to read here for you. Which of the following scenarios would most likely lead to a simultaneous rise in both unemployment and economic inactivity? What do we think here? And as we, in our time together, as our group develops and improves, it's often you get a feel and a flavour for the quality of the students. A lot of answers coming in saying C. Let's double check. Well done, everybody. It is C. A technological shift renders some skills obsolete, if you like, creative destruction in the labour market, whilst discouraging older workers from retraining. Really good answers. A couple of people saying B. It's plausible, but it's a distractor. That's the purpose of multiple choice. They throw in plausible distractors so that not everybody gets the right answer. So if you got 5 out of 5, superb. By the way, if you did get 5 out of 5, just post your score in the chat window so we can give a bit of a shout out to those people who got 5 out of 5 on multiple choice. Okay, moving on. Just very quickly, this is an area of the spec. I know it's hard at the moment. There's so much going on in the world economy. But when you're revising during Easter, precision is so important, and avoiding those little inaccuracies that sometimes creep in when you're marking papers. So you need to know the difference between unemployment and underemployment. You need to know the difference between economic activity and inactivity. You need to know the definition of long-term unemployment. People have been out of work for at least 1 year. Crucially, and we're going to talk about this today, you need to be able to differentiate between the unemployment trap and the poverty trap. Now, both of these are disincentive traps that stop people either taking a job, or the poverty trap. Actually, the latter, this one impacts on those in work. Okay, people that maybe have a part-time job or maybe have the option of an increase in pay, but they don't think it's financially worth their while, and therefore they often end up in something called working poverty. I think working poverty is one of the most important issues in the UK just at present. There are millions of people claiming universal credit, including those who are unemployed. but many people claim universal credit and they have a job. And the usual stuff, of course, differentiate between different types of unemployment. I'm sure you've done that in lessons and in class, but make sure everything is well understood. Okay, so moving on. Here's a two bubble quiz questions for you, slightly different question today. Post your answers in the chat window. Let's see who gets this right. Bubble quiz, you have to identify the correct answers. So it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, could all be correct or none of them. Okay. Here's my first bubble quiz question for you. Which UK regions have lower unemployment than the Northeast? And this is as of March 2025, so the most recent data. So please do post your answers in the chat window. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, or none of them? Okay. Which regions have lower unemployment than the Northeast? So, for example, Dan Taylor thinks it's A, C, and D. Jim Starr thinks it's C. A lot of people are saying that London has lower unemployment than the Northeast. A lot of people saying A and C. In fact, the number of people saying C is remarkable. Here's the answer coming up. The answer is A and D. Did anybody get A and D? I'm looking in the web a little bit. Anna, for example, said A, B, and D. Rockstar said B, C, D. Okay, so Northern Ireland and Scotland have lower unemployment than the Northeast, but London has higher unemployment. So I think we had a couple of people. Ollie Jarvis came in with A and D, but after I'd given the answer, I think. Let's just look at the data on this one. So the UK unemployment rate, 4.4% at the end of last year. It's nudged up to 4.5 just recently. But London has the highest unemployment in the UK. If you get a question on unemployment in the UK, keep that stat in mind. Impress the examiners. In fact, London has significantly higher unemployment than Wales, and there Wales is well ahead of the North East, which comes in third. There are pockets of unemployment in London which are significantly 2-3 times even that figure. Northern Ireland has a staggeringly low rate of unemployment, in part because of the tremendous growth and success of the Irish economy, with whom they do so much trade. Don't forget, effectively, Northern Ireland is still part of the European single market. Well, thank you, Tefon. They're a very useful case study. It's a great application as you're coming towards your exam. But look at Northern Ireland, though, 1.6%. But the other point about Northern Ireland is it's got the highest rate of inactivity, something like, if memory serves, 27% of people of working age are inactive. So part of the low unemployment is the success of the Irish economy and trade with Northern Ireland. It's also a high inactivity. Of course, those people are not counted as unemployed. Okay, great stuff. Moving on. Here's our second bubble quiz question. So I don't think many people got the first one right. Have they got this one? Which of these countries have lower unemployment than the UK? And, oh yeah, quite a few people saying, yeah, people explaining why. Well, it says it's part of London's higher unemployment due to its student population not yet in the workforce. Well, if you're a full-time student, you're not unemployed. You are economically inactive. Now, this one's harder. Which of these countries, as of, I think, the January, if memory serves, I've used trading economics for this. Which of these nations have lower unemployment than the UK? Singapore, South Korea, France, and Mexico. So what have we got here? Chris has gone for A and C. Joe Jones has gone for A, B, and C. I'm trying to scan. Oh, Leanna, I think, has got the right answer. Correct. I think that's right. I'm looking for a combination of 3 countries, in fact. Okay. And Anton has got the right answer, I think. So well done to Leanna and Anton. And the answer is ABD, Singapore, South Korea, and Mexico. France has significantly higher unemployment than the UK. Let's have a look at the stats on this one, just if you want to, again, a little case study. Again, a little stat for your exams. If you're revising, all the students, by the way, they come to our live streams and they have their revision notes and they're just adding little notes and points in the existing revision notes as they go through. Look at that. South Africa, 34% unemployment, measured unemployment in January 2025. That's the official figure. We know the unofficial figure is much higher. There's a lot of hidden unemployment in many countries, including South Africa. Youth unemployment, double that, 65%. Turkey has 10% unemployment. France comes pretty high. These are the G20 countries, the majority of them. UK there, 4.4. Germany quite low, and South Korea even lower, 3%. Really interesting stats. I think Singapore has the lowest amongst the G20, 1.9%. Chris says, do you get extra marks if you state proper statistics? The answer is yes. First of all, you've got to use the data in the extracts if you're writing a data response question, and all the data you need will be in the extracts. But for example, Edexcel 25 mark questions, there could be an essay on unemployment. I hope there is. You have to use your own context, and this kind of stuff is gold dust as application. Let's do a couple of calcs, I think, calculations. Oh, before we do that, quick overview. Yeah, just to give you a feel for the numbers, as of the latest figures, 34 million people in work in the UK, employment rate of 75% of people of working age. UK unemployment rate is 4.5% of the labour force. London, as we've seen, highest unemployment. Over 9 million people are inactive of working age, 21%. About 320,000 people have been out of work for at least a year. Another key topic for the exam, possibly youth unemployment, now 14.5%. And as we'll see in a second, that's gone up a lot in the last year. And there are just under 1 million young people, aged 16 to 24, your age range, who are not in work, not in education, not in training. NEETs, 13.4% of all of that population group. So there's some key stats down in the UK. If you have a calculator to hand, let's do a couple of calc questions. We don't have a timer on this, but this will be a 2-mark question for AQA and a 2-mark calculation question for section A with Edexcel. So let's do 2 of these, and we'll keep an eye on the chat window, see who gets the right answer. In January 2025, the number of employed people was 33.92 million, with an employment rate of 75%. Question is, can you calculate, please, the total number of people aged 16 to 64 in the population? This is worth doing, actually, because quite a few of the answers coming through are incorrect. So the employment rate was 75%. So of that population cohort, age 16 to 64, 3/4 were in work. So what was the total number of people in the population? I think Louis and quite a few others coming through the answer. Flora's got it, I think. Well done. Here's the answer coming up on the screen. 45.2 million or 45.23 million. Yep, so you divide by 0.75. Let's do one more. Again, the more calculation questions you can do, the better in the exam. And the thing to do is ask ChatGPT to create some questions for you. So you can just practice doing these questions until you get everything right. Real earnings rose by 3.1%, including bonuses, in the last year. If the average weekly earnings, including bonuses, were £600 last year, what would real average weekly earnings be now? A little calculation question for you. So if last year people on average in real terms were earning £600 a week, multiplied by 52, you get a feel for the median, the mean incomes. What would be real wages increased by 3.1%? Yep, Amelia's come in, and Liana, super quick. Well done to Dan. Our production team, Jim and Lucy, are working hard behind the scenes. Archie as well, and Giles, one of our great contributors. Here is the Pooh goes for rounded up. Yeah, excellent, and always good to round up. Here's the answer coming up: £618.60. Yeah, it's an interesting question about whether you should round up. There's always risks in doing that. The danger is that if it says to one decimal place or to pounds and pence, just go for the detail. £618.60. Great stuff. Well, let's crack on. Time is our enemy. Let's think about cause. We're going to look at cause-consequence policy. Cause-consequence policy. Over to you. The 1-minute clock is about to start. Can you give me 2 causes of structural unemployment, and we'll post the best ones on the screen. Have a go. So some great answers coming through. Those of you watching live with us, keep an eye on the chat window. Some brilliant answers. There's JT's point about the impact of AI. Many people talking about that. I really like Tom Kelsall's point. If we can find Tom's contribution and pop it up on the screen. Long-term changes in the labour market, which means certain sectors are declining. Tom, that's a really good point because it hints at the time dimension. Structural change in the pattern of jobs is inevitable. That's the way it is. Okay, there's a default quote by careers teachers, which is to say that 60% of the jobs that you will do haven't been invented yet, which of course is nonsense, but it's something that careers teachers tend to say anyway because it makes them feel good. I've gone for these 2 points. I've gone for patterns of jobs changing, but the key is occupational immobility, and quite a few of you did mention this. I think Dan mentioned occupational unemployment. So as the pattern of labour demand changes, people may find barriers to retraining, reskilling, upskilling. So people made redundant in heavy industry and textiles and engineering, or people who've lost their jobs because of automation, robotics, and AI. Keep in mind, it's worth noting that automation, robotics, that kind of stuff, that can replace labour, but it can also complement labour. So there's the whole issue there about the impact of AI and robotics on overall labour demand, as well as the pattern or the composition of labour demand. I think we've done a video on that actually on the YouTube channel. And then the other really important point, please do add it to your revision notes if you haven't already done so. The biggest single cause of structural unemployment is the barriers that people have to jump over to find work. That could be gender discrimination, it could be ethnic discrimination, it could be the cost of moving. But often the tax and welfare system acts as a major barrier. People decide, well, is it worth taking a job? I might have to pay childcare or travel to work, or the cost of renting could be extremely high. Or I lose my benefits if I start earning some extra income. And effectively, the tax rate that they're paying is way higher than the tax rate I'm paying, and I have a job. So people often stop from taking relatively low paid jobs because of the interaction of tax and benefit. And that's called the unemployment trap. So structural, would you say that geographical mobility is an employment barrier? Yes, I mean, it clearly is. And people often give the example of they can't move from one country to another or one region, north-south divide. But actually, it's often very localized. There isn't a bus service into town, or so the cost of the taxi is too much. Often not 50, 100, 200 miles. It's often 5, 10 miles you can't afford, really, to get to work. So it is a major barrier. Zach says, can you say about sunset industries making people redundant? For sure. And I think that's a really good point, Zach, if you get a development question, because often that structural change in industries happens quite rapidly in countries where there isn't quite the sophistication of human capital for people to move quickly and easily between sectors. But sunset industries links neatly, Zach, to the whole issue of protectionism in many ways, doesn't it? Great stuff. Our production team are outstanding, of course, in finding those little questions. So if you do have a question in the live stream, post it and we'll do our best to answer it. And the live group are brilliant also at sharing answers and helping each other out. Okay, let's move on to consequence. Now, I'm posting here something that I thought was pretty up to date until about a week ago. It's the Office of the OBR's forecast for the UK economy, published at the time of the budget. That's in black, contrasted with the last time Rachel Reed spoke, which was October. And this is, again, great context for the exam. Growth forecast is halved. So the OBR has halved their growth forecast. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. They've increased their inflation forecast to above 3%. And they've also raised their forecast for unemployment. So unemployment in the UK is going up and is forecast to rise. My instinct is to be closer to 5% by the end of this year than 4%. So here's a question for you. Now, this is where we're going to think synoptically. Okay, so this, those of you on Excel, in particular, paper 3. A minute on the clock. Can you assess 2 micro effects of rising unemployment in the UK? Have a go. So think microeconomics here, micro consequences as opposed to macro effects. And we'll post some answers on the screen as they come up. Yeah, the reason for doing this actually is because we're going to think synoptically. So we're really trying to focus in on microeconomics to start with, and then we'll do a minute on macro. So Federica, decrease in productive efficiency, economy operating inside the PPF. Now that will be macro if you're talking about the whole economy. So we need to bring that down to the level of the industry. And there's some good points. I think, did you see Dan B's point about externalities? That unemployment can cause externalities. Okay, the social cost or the external costs of people being out of work, particularly within communities where unemployment is high and long-term and embedded in the economy. So I've gone for these 2 points. So I'm trying to think micro, so an impact on real living standards of those affected, in particular at the household level. So being jobless usually leads to a loss of income, despite what some people write in exams. People have less money to save, they fall behind with rents, mortgages, and other bills, so the risk of mortgage default goes up. The evaluation point here is that the government does have the welfare system, universal credit and job seekers allowance, but so much depends on the duration of unemployment. Are you out of work for frictional reasons, or are you out of work for long-term structural reasons? And quite a few of you, I really like to see it, businesses affected by unemployment going up. So lost sales, inward shift of revenue curves, perhaps a shift from low profits to subnormal profits. Counterpoint, evaluation point is the government, of course, can step in, as it did, of course, during the pandemic, both to stop unemployment going up and to provide some wage subsidies for businesses. Let's move on to the macro side then. Here's another minute on the clock. Pick out, please, some of the macro consequences of unemployment going up. Multiple effects can be local, so they can affect a certain town or area, but obviously Warwick's point is multiple effects can be national as well, which will make it macro. Keep an eye on the live screen, everybody. Some great answers already coming through, and we're watching all of them. Interesting point there from Finn on the current account. Yeah, good stuff. So Elizabeth there focusing on the fiscal effects, Leanna talking about the negative output gap, and hat tip, the best answer so far today, hysteresis, like long-term unemployment, increasing government spending on welfare. Yes, if you get a rise in short-term unemployment, if that becomes long-term unemployment, there's a big hysteresis effect, particularly if people leave the labour market. Hysteresis means that people stop looking for work, and as a result, they become almost semi-permanent claimers of universal credit and other benefits. Really like some great points. There was a great point about negative accelerator effect. All good stuff. And I think you're making a neat distinction there between the micro consequences and the macro effects. I've gone for the following. Let's quickly move to those because we've got time allows. Yeah, I've gone for the fiscal side. Clearly, when unemployment goes up, it's just much harder for the government to balance their books because tax revenues go down, income tax, VAT, and so on, and welfare payments go up. So clearly, unemployment rising to 5% would make it much harder for Rachel Reeves to achieve her fiscal rules. Just a bit of background, a bit of context there. Be careful. Job seekers allowance is not a lot of money. In last year, it was £71.70 a week. If you were under 25, £90.50 a week if you're age 25 and above. So job seekers allowance is not a lot of money, in my opinion, which is why well over 1 million people who are unemployed also, claim universal credit. In fact, many people in work claim universal credit. Then I've gone for the weaker growth. Yeah, high unemployment tends to weaken growth. Less spending, of course, spending is a big percentage of GDP, the negative multiplier. And also some people talk about the accelerator effect. People are spending less, business profits go down, there could be a fall in investment. Counterpoint, of course, is the government's going to introduce some counter-cyclical fiscal policies, or the Bank of England might cut interest rates. But some great answers coming through, some great answers. All it says is writing notes with my TutorTube pen and my TutorTube book. I mean, is that the closest thing to the perfect tools for revision? Well done, Ollie. Some great answers already coming through. Okay, to finish with, let's have a look at application. So here's the application spinner. Those of you who don't know, this is powered by OpenAI. We're going to focus on policies. There's no time on this. We'll have a minute or so. So let's spin the wheel, please, Jim, in the production office. We are looking for micro policies to address whatever the spinner lands on. Okay, so let's take youth unemployment. Could well be a topic this year. What do you think? Can you give me some specific example? This is the application spinner, and often we get some brilliant answers coming through. So which micro policies could help to bring down youth unemployment? If you want the numbers again, 14% youth unemployment. It's gone up by 2% within the space of a year. It's more than 2.5 times, well, it's 3.5 times adult unemployment. So our production team will be maybe putting some of these policies on the screen if we can find space on the screen. A lot of you, like Louis, talking about funding for apprenticeships, incentives for businesses to hire people under 25. That's good stuff. Amelia goes for increased job training. Dan goes for investment in education and training. Now, the point about Dan's point is that he goes beyond education and training, T-levels, apprenticeships. What you would do there, Dan, to make it even better would be to give me a specific example of an industry where that apprenticeship might apply. That really does get you the application marks in 2025 exams. Again, Louis, increased funding for apprenticeships, incentive for businesses, but what kind of incentives? By the way, all of these answers are good. To make them better, just add a little bit more detail. Which businesses, which sectors? Giles has an increase in apprenticeship levy offered to firms, i.e. not scrapping level 7 apprenticeships. Apprenticeship levy, by the way, is a moot point about the effectiveness of it. Many businesses, the money given to it hasn't necessarily been used to fund apprenticeships, but lots of senior execs spend lots of time in hotels. Funding HTQs in engineering. JT, that is pure application, as well as widening access, making engineering more accessible across the genders. Yeah, really good stuff. Oh, Tom Kelsall. There's Leanna Point, construction T-levels. Tom Kelsall has been on fire today. Increased availability of apprenticeship and T-level skills to encourage those who are NEETs. Great stuff, Tom, to pick up skills in things such as bricklaying and building. Tom, that is a brilliant point, especially given the government's commitment to trying to build 1.5 million homes. Here's our suggestions. I think they really do replicate, hard to beat. Increased apprenticeship funding in industries such as construction, health and social care. We need skilled workers across manufacturing, construction and care. Startup grants and loans in sectors such as digital marketing. Many of you will already be involved in digital marketing or keen to pursue green projects. And maybe take young people out of the labour market. So maintenance grants for student degree programs, expand the maintenance grant. When I went to university, back in the day, it was 42 years ago now, I arrived at my Cambridge college and there was a cheque from the local authority for that term. I got a maintenance grant, which paid, and there were no tuition fees. So maybe expanding maintenance grants. Let's try one more. This is brilliant. We've got time for 2 more, maybe. Let's try 2 more. Oh, before we do, there's the chart showing youth unemployment. The reason why I've chosen this topic today is look at that chart. What's happened in the last couple of years. Keep in mind that the exam was set a year ago, approximately. Youth unemployment's been on the rise for 3 years now. Okay. And back in the day, 15 years ago, it was a popular exam question. Let's, this time looking for demand side policies that spin the wheel. Demand side policies to address long-term unemployment. So let's take a moment for this one. Long-term unemployed people have been out of work for at least a year. Now, normally, you'd be thinking about supply-side policies. But can you think of demand-side policies that might help get some of those long-term unemployed back into work? Evaluation point could be the main policies are probably supply-side. However, there's also a role for demand-side policies, if that makes sense. Ollie Mellenchip, one of our great contributors, has gone for increasing the tax-free band. Yes, £12,570, isn't it? That in theory incentivizes people to find work, but does it address long-term causes? So that's an interesting point. Quite a few of you saying cutting unemployment benefits. Be really careful by saying that in the exam because it does not address the cause. It just does not address the cause. JT talks about government investment in domestic industries like British Steel, which is now Tata Steel. Some great answers coming through, by the way, some really subtle and nuanced answers. Schemes to allow people to gradually re-enter the workforce. So funding for firms to take on people part-time, direct funding for childcare arrangements. JT Galaxy's point. JT is one of our amazing economists. One demand side policy is government spending, so it is demand side, on programs like Skills England, creating employment hubs for adults not in work. Now that's like a hybrid of supply and demand side policies. It's superb. The net talks about lower interest rates. Well, it is a demand side policy if the central bank decides to cut interest rates. That is a demand side policy, although it's technically not a government policy because the bank is independent. But the examiners would credit that. So the net, your point would be valid. Yeah, Warwick talking about investing in industries such as fintech. So try to find the emerging industries, renewables, fintech, creative industries where new jobs can be found. What have I gone for? Let's just double check. I've gone for construction. I think I've gone for corporation tax relief for new capital investment. So 25% corporation tax at the moment, 19% for small businesses, but maybe tax relief if you build a factory, a data center, a processing plant in an area of high unemployment. Creates jobs. Infrastructure spending and associated funding for skills, which of course the UK government is trying to do. And maybe employment subsidies, because long-term unemployed often find it hard to get into work. So maybe an employment subsidy if you cut in employers' national insurance, for example, if you take on somebody who's been out of work for at least a year. But some good answers again on the chat. Amazing. Well, let's just do one more to finish, and then we have finished. Let's spin that wheel. Supply side policies to address this topical issue: labour shortages in construction. So last minute on today, everybody. Here's the issue. The construction sector is facing endemic, persistent labour shortages. The Labour government wants to build 1.5 million homes in the next 5 years. It isn't going to happen unless you can address this problem. So what kind of supply side policies? The more specific, the better. Amelia says subsidised apprenticeships and T-levels in construction. Amelia, that's a great answer because that is specific. It's specific to the industry. So well done on that. Yeah. Okay. A lot of people are saying these kind of things. Alex talking about improving transport links so that people can move to construction sites around the country. Ollie says removing tariffs on importing raw materials. Interesting. It is a supply side policy if you go for trade liberalisation. Great stuff. Yeah, really good stuff. Wow. Well, I'm conscious of time here, so I'll show you my answers. But thank you to everybody who's posting answers in the chat window. Yeah, the expansion of the Skilled Trades Work Visa Programme. Work visa, 605,000 last year. Investment in opening new specialist building colleges, which used to be around. They used to be colleges for nurses training and building trades. They were part and parcel of towns and cities. Many of them have closed. We need to reopen them. And then the other thing is, instead of trying to increase labour supply, perhaps tilt the argument and try to reduce labour demand. So subsidies for technology such as robotics to increase efficiency and reduce the need for labour in the construction sector. So maybe some sort of targeted financial support to encourage modular house building, to increase the rate of construction and make construction more capital intensive. Hopefully you get the idea here. Some great answers coming through. The more specific you can be, the better, particularly when it comes to supply side policies, which you will be writing about this summer. The more specific, the better. Make it related to the industry and to the cause and to the issue. Brilliant stuff. Well done, everybody. I hope you found this a half an hour together on unemployment useful. I've enjoyed it. The contributions from nearly 400 of you live with us today have been absolutely outstanding. And we're starting to see emerging this little collective we had last year. They achieved amazing results, actually, helping each other, supporting each other. And oftentimes they ended up at university together. I know that from communications. Ollie says, when's the next one? Ollie, you've just got 23 and a half hours to wait. Tomorrow, the last one of the week, we're doing ADAS, economic cycles, and the multiplier. So please spread the word. Let's try and get even more people coming. JT will be in A-level business at 2 p.m. I'll be there watching. I think there's a business one at 1 o'clock as well today. And we have geography. If you're doing AQA geography, 5:30, a live revision session for A-level geographers. So thank you to everybody for joining in. Amazing contributions. As always, stay happy, stay healthy, stay curious, and I'll see you sometime soon.